With us now, CNN political commentator Alyssa Farrah-Griffin, CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig, and CNN political commentator Van Jones. Ellie, I actually want to start with the interview from last night because it was so methodical and concise in terms of almost taking apart what we've heard from the president's lawyers up to this point. They have not presented a case. We've only seen the prosecutor's version of events in the 45-page indictment up to this point. But specifically something that Barr said on the existence of fraud. Take a listen.
Here we are 2.5 years, and still they haven't come forward with any evidence. And in fact, as the indictment puts forward, you have Giuliani saying, yeah, we have a lot of theories, but we don't have any evidence. I mean, that's a pretty big admission. No evidence. They wanted to overturn the election, and they had no evidence of outcome determinative fraud.
Ellie, you keyed on that. Why?
So first of all, Phil, this was a fantastic interview. I stayed up way past my bedtime watching it, and I found myself actually agreeing with quite a bit of what Bill Barr said. However, if prosecutors are relying on Bill Barr as a witness, as some sort of divine messenger of truth on the issue of was there election fraud, they're going to have a big problem because, yes, Bill Barr, weeks after the election, December of 2020, did come forward publicly and say there's no evidence of fraud, and he has said that consistently since. The problem is that for months leading up to the election, he was Donald Trump's biggest cheerleader when it came to the issue of fake allegations of election fraud. He went on NPR. He said there's massive risk of election fraud here. NPR had to run it back and say, we allowed the Attorney General to tell a falsehood on our air. Bill Barr went in front of Congress in the summer of 2020, said huge risk of fraud in voting, nothing we can do to police it. He was asked, do you have any proof of that? He said, no, but I just know it is common sense. He came on our air on CNN in September of 2020. And Wolf Blitzer, rightly knowing that Bill Barr was pushing the election fraud lie, asked him, how many cases has your DOJ actually prosecuted of election fraud? And Barr hemmed and hawed. And then Barr said, well, there's one case involving 1,700 false ballots, which sounded remarkable until the next day when it came out that that case involved one ballot, one instance of election fraud. DOJ had to run a correction there. So Bill Barr has changed his tune quite a bit. He is not going to be an effective witness for prosecutors on this issue. He's trying to whitewash history, but that won't wash in court. He was behind this lie. He helped spread it during those key months leading up to the election.
Van, taking aside the issues, the real issues that I think Ellie rightly brings up about Bill Barr and what he did and said before versus now, I was so struck by the fact that he really believes that Jack Smith has, quote, a lot more that's not in the indictment, specifically on Trump's state of mind, because that's the part that's the key. That's the part that's going to be hardest to prove. Mm-hmm. And Bill Barr believes that there is a lot more that's not in this indictment.
Look, Bill Barr was a top cop. He's a prosecutor's prosecutor, so it makes sense that he would say that. That is the whole key. If Trump is really that dumb, then he gets a chance to walk. But if he's actually smart and he knew what he was doing, then it's a very different story. What's going on now is that you have these two narratives in the country that are basically the same narrative. The Democrats are saying the president misused his office, used the power of his office to hold on to power. That's what we're saying about Trump. But what the Republicans are saying about the Democrats, the same thing. This president is misusing his office, the Department of Justice, to knock out Donald Trump to stay in power. So we're literally in mirror world right now, where both sides have the same accusation against each other. The question you have to ask is this. If you're a parent or a grandparent, and you had a kid that was accused of cheating, and the teacher says, we have evidence that this kid was conspiring to cheat, and you say, well, Johnny, what's the truth? Well, the truth is the teacher hates me, the students are against me, the principal's an idiot, the entire Department of Education is corrupt. Who do you believe? I mean, it's a lot harder to believe. It's a lot easier to believe that Donald Trump just didn't want to leave office and was conspiring with his friends. It's a lot harder to believe what the Republicans are saying, which is the entire system, local prosecutors, state prosecutors, federal prosecutors are all conspiring against poor little Johnny.
It's also a situation of show your work, right? Like there's an indictment, there are 3 indictments. That's the thing that always gets me. It's not apples to apples, not because it's one side or the other. It's because one side has facts and evidence, and if you want to challenge that in court and defeat it in court, by all means, that's why the system's there. The other side just throws the allegation out.
But we don't know what Trump's lawyers are going to do yet.
No, but I mean more about is Biden ordering the Justice Department based on what? Please don't. I'm not like I would happily have and break that story if it existed. I'm telling you right now, if you know, call me immediately. I would love to write the story. But we just don't have evidence where there is evidence in terms of what the former president did. I want to ask you. Actually, I want to start with this. You might have some idea of what evidence they may have in terms of what the president's mindset was, because you testified to this issue specifically. Yes. We've shown the video a number of times from it. What's your sense to Poppy's point of what more they may have?
Well, I do agree with the Attorney General. I think that there's more here because I think the shakiest part of this indictment and following case is going to be the mindset and whether or not he actually believed the election. This free speech argument, I actually think, is a very shallow and weak argument because you can say just about anything in this country, but it's when it gets into fraudulent behavior and conspiracy, that's actions, that's conduct, that's not about a matter of speech. But I know that Donald Trump knew that he lost the election. And what this, to Van's point, what this argument is going to rely on is, despite the overwhelming evidence, demonstrable evidence that he lost and that every reasonable person around him knew he did, he still intellectually just didn't have the capacity to understand it. This is basically going to be the Donald Trump was too stupid to know he lost argument. I think he's going to hate it when his lawyers start having to make this case. And I would keep my eye on that because there's not going to be, and there might be some fanfare of relitigating, like we want to go to these 7 states and for the 20th time see if there was fraud and if those election results could have been different. But it's ultimately going to come down to he truly believed this, even though it was untrue.
Ellie, can you also explain why the argument that I just relied on my lawyers is going to be super dicey to make in court? Because then if you got to put Trump on the stand, then you pierce attorney-client privilege. Explain that to folks.
Yeah, so there is such a defense that a defendant can raise in court called advice of counsel, which is essentially, my lawyers blessed this. My lawyers told me it was okay to do this. What am I to know better than them? There is risk in making this argument, high risk. First of all, you give up the attorney-client privilege. So if Donald Trump actually makes that claim in court, all of his communications with all of his lawyers about anything become fair game for cross-examination. Donald Trump would almost certainly have to take the stand to make that defense. We can only imagine what a cross-examination of Donald Trump would look like. And it's not a free-for-all. You can't show that your lawyers gave you advice that was patently ridiculous, that nobody would have reasonably believed. So it is there as a defense avenue, but it's a really tough road to go down.
I think you'd put up all those then administration lawyers, by the way, who the indictment lists out, who told him the exact opposite.
Alyssa, can I ask you, your former boss, Vice President Mike, one of your former bosses was indicted. The other one was the Vice President, is at the center of that indictment. He spoke about it. He was asked about it on the campaign trail. I want to listen to this.
Anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. It wasn't just that they asked for a pause. The president specifically asked me, and his gaggle of crackpot lawyers asked me to literally reject votes, essentially to overturn the election.
Well, I love Mike Pence on leash. Listen,
I know that's what literally I was like, wow, that's a lot for Mike Pence.
His lips to God's ears. I think he's going to turn out to be the most important witness in this case. I think it's very likely that he's going to take the stand. He knows better than most people because there were conversations, to the best of my knowledge, that were directly between just him and the president. No former president, no staff around. He did keep contemporaneous notes. And I applaud him for being unequivocal and telling the truth about this. When you look at the GOP field, there's really only a few who are telling the truth about what we all saw with our own eyes on January 6th and the weeks leading up to it.
Man.
Look, I think that guy sounds like a leader. He sounds like he's got conviction. He sounds like the guy who did stand up to Donald Trump and who did, refuse to cave in. Where has he been?
Yeah, more of that, Mike.
More of that. Like up until now, what you've mainly seen is just kind of hemming and hawing. It could be the fact that he doesn't have that much left to lose. He may not even make the debate stage. And I think if you're going to take a stand, today is the time to make that stand. People are paying attention now in a different way. You have these other cases up until now that maybe weren't as much a threat to the country. This is the big deal, and he's taking a big stand, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to watch in not just the hours ahead, but days, weeks ahead. Van Jones, Alyssa, Ellie, thanks, guys. We appreciate it.